There are great rivalries, and there are great rivalries, and we all know the difference between the two. Athens versus Sparta, Ali versus Frazier, Adolescence versus Orthodontistry, all great rivalries. Coke versus Pepsi, Star Wars versus Star Trek, Beatles versus Stones. These ones deserve capital letters. Great rivalries can be huge enough to impassion countries and cities. They're powerful enough to launch fiery debates out of seemingly mundane subjects. They can be small and strong enough to consume just a few people for years, and the rest of us for the least time it takes to watch this list of great rivalries. And you can quote us on that. Number 5. Crosstown sports rivalry, Rangers versus Celtics. Nothing tears asunder nice cities like Milan, Istanbul, Buenos Aires, or any other football-favored dot on the globe like an intense derby match between two teams that share the same hometown but not the same fans. Of course, all these places proudly lay claim to the most heated crosstown rivalry on the planet. Glasgow's notorious Old Firm Derby between the Scottish Professional Football League's two most famous clubs, Celtic and Rangers, gets our nod. And only partially for their 399 hostile matches dating to 1888, fueled by generations of enough sectarian animosity and occasional bloodshed to recently usher in desperate pride over prejudice and boys against bigotry campaigns promoting some semblance of basic decency. What's the kicker? Last year's bankruptcy-related ouster of Rangers from Scotland's top-tier division means that these two teams currently aren't even playing each other. And yet, there's still no team either one hates more. Can such age-old loathing survive the unthinkable suspension of a 400th Old Firm match? As long as the Pope remains a Catholic, one local fan tells us. Now that's a rivalry. Number 4, mountain rivalry, Everest versus K2. The number of climbers who have reached the top of the world's highest peak, Mount Everest, has now surpassed the 3,000 mark, including a 13-year-old boy and a 73-year-old woman. K2, the world's second highest mountain, has allowed barely a tenth of that number to the top of its far less climber-friendly peak, killing one mountaineer for every 4 summiters, according to 8000ers.com. In other words, if mountains could talk, these two would definitely have it out about who's higher and mightier. But they can't, so we leave that all to the high-fiving Everest masses versus a handful of elite K2 alpinists who gladly point out that bagging the highest peak on any given continent is usually nowhere near as tough as climbing the second highest. Number 3, top city rivalry, Sydney versus Melbourne. Every city worth its art museum or revived waterfront has a rival city. Usually they're within easy driving distance and share the same highways, currency, soap operas, chain restaurants, hated domestic politicians, even more despised international rivals, and 100 other things that can confirm those two places actually have way more in common than they'd ever care to admit. Every Barcelona has its Madrid, every Dallas its Houston, Moscow its St. Petersburg, but Australia's two biggest cities have been relentlessly butting heads since Melbourne was founded in 1835 by exactly the sort of industrious Tasmanian pastoralists that Sydney's founding felons couldn't stand. What continues to brutally divide these two cities, other than fewer than 500 miles, some beer brands, the usual sports grudges, and less than 2 points on the latest annual World's Most Livable Cities list. Melbourne got 97.5, Sydney 96.1. Self-proclaimed cultural capital of the known and unknown universe, Melbourne thinks Sydney is flashy and showy with little to no cultural taste. But not that Melbourne would ever admit it, with a pretty harbor, great beaches, and warmer water. Sydney's persistent inferiority complex is chalked up to the poisonous self-awareness that it's a superficial tart, blessed with good looks who dropped out of school early. Melbourne is the sophisticated, wealthier sister with an MA from Oxford and innately more interesting, or so it claims. Number 2, geopolitical athletic rivalry, India versus Pakistan. More than a fifth of the world's population, 1.5 billion viewers, tuned in for the 2011 World Cup semifinal cricket match between India and Pakistan. According to TV ratings firm Initiative, a regular match, no such thing, between these two not exactly friendly neighbors attracts about 3 million viewers. India and Pakistan's national cricket rivalry has been dubbed by the New York Times as the Yankee versus Boston Red Sox plus Barcelona versus Real Madrid plus England versus Australia in any sport. Distilled and deepened with an extra dose of hostile geopolitics and the passions of 1.4 billion people. Since their first test match in 1952, only 3 wars, A political assassination and a major terrorist attack in Mumbai could keep these two teams away from their drawn-out pursuit for cricket supremacy, which remains as unresolved as Kashmir. Number 1. Cigar rolling rivalry, Cairo versus Penna versus Reyes. Some world records hog all the spotlight. Fastest man, longest jump, most hot dogs consumed in 10 minutes. Everyone expects high-profile drama and the stuff of great rivalries from these achievements. Most wouldn't expect the same to be true for cigar rolling. Most would be wrong. For more than a decade, the Guinness World Record title for the longest hand-rolled cigar has bounced numerous times between a trio of fiery competitors. Current record holder Jose Casteller Cairo from Havana, Cuba, held the first title by hand-rolling an 11-meter cigar in 2001, before breaking his own record a couple years later with a 14-meter-plus effort. Enter Puerto Rico's Patricio Peña, who would stunningly shatter Cairo's record in 2005. Before Cairo grabbed it back, before Ybor City, Florida, couple Wallace and Margarita Reyes climbed into the ring, rolling an even longer one in 2006. Then Peña bettered theirs in 2007, before Cairo rolled back into first in 2008, before the Reyes duo topped Cairo's in 2009 with a cigar just short of 60 meters that took them a week to roll. On April 25, 2011, Cairo quietly sat down with his cigar leaves and tree resin glue. 9 days later, there it was, an 81.8-meter cigar, the longest one ever, for now.